I'm David Kirkpatrick. I run something called the Techonomy Conference, which is an event about technology's impact on business and society, where we bring together technology leaders with general business leaders. I also, although it's not as relevant this time as it was earlier in the week, wrote a book called The Facebook Effect. But I'm here to introduce Ginni Rometty, who's CEO of IBM. She's had that job for just a little over 2 years, after 33 years at that company. And her career is not a typical IBM path, which is one where almost all of its previous leaders had started in sales and worked their way up, the internal leaders. She actually is someone who came out of college with a degree in electrical engineering and computer science, very unusual for a woman in those days. Went to work in IBM's insurance and financial services group, doing, migrating of customer projects, as she calls it, pulling cables. She really worked as an engineer inside IBM, and then started moving up after they clearly identified her as a major potential leader in the company, as she has subsequently proven. She spent quite a bit of time, most of her career, building the the services business of IBM, the professional services piece in particular, which is, IBM is the largest professional services company in the world. She oversaw the integration of PricewaterhouseCoopers when they bought that, and then now that's 100,000 people overall, that group. Most recently, she was running IBM's sales division, all the sales globally, before being tapped to be CEO. In her 2 years, 2+ years as CEO, she has not been afraid to make big changes. She's going to talk up here for a while, and I'm going to speak with her on stage a little bit after that. But, one of the things she and I are going to discuss is that the challenges that she faced, and that any leader today faces, running a giant global company, because the pace of change is so spectacularly quick. And one of the things she's done is, unsentimentally, to have sold off major parts of IBM, most recently the industry standard server division, which IBM sold to Lenovo very recently. She's also sold the point-of-sale terminal business, and what the other one I'm forgetting, but she sold another big part of IBM as well. So maybe I can ask her that when she gets up here. In any case, I hope she'll join me out here now, Ginni Rometty, and then I will rejoin you when she finishes her talk. Please come out, Ginni.
Thank you, David.
What was that other part you sold?
Customer care.
Oh, the call center business.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Thank you, David. And look, thank you for everyone. Great to see you. It is great to be at this Mobile World Conference. And I must tell you, it wasn't that long ago I was here for a client meeting, and they asked me to speak at dinner, although I didn't realize I was after dinner, which meant I spoke at 10:30 at night. So I appreciate 6 p.m. I appreciate to see everyone here. And I have to say, there is one thing that strikes me about this conference. And David was asking, was I the first CEO to attend this conference from IBM? And I said, yes. And I said, but instead of thinking it was just Mobile World, this is clearly an ecosystem conference. And that's how I think of what this is. Everybody I've seen here is from all parts of the ecosystem. So I thought about that in what I was going to talk to you about tonight, and hopefully to leave you with something of value. Because I think this is both an exciting time, but it is a disruptive time for everyone in every industry. And so while I went through the hall and talked to many of you, you've had a lot of discussion from the consumer side of mobility. So let me, in just 20 minutes, tee up for you and have a discussion about the enterprise. And what I want to talk about is the key shifts that are changing the technology industry. I will assert reshaping the technology industry, and then the impact they have both on my company, our industry, but on global business. And then I want to turn it around, and let me take a mobile lens and then share with you some of the things we've learned from all the mobility work we've done. It's 6,000 mobile engagements. We've had partnerships with 40 of the wireless carriers around the world. We've spent decades to build what I hope you think is a very good mobile-first portfolio. After years of development, 12 acquisitions, hundreds of patents, 1 million downloads, we've learned some lessons. But let me start, and I'd like to start with this idea about what are the 3 trends that are reshaping the technology industry. So for those of you that like to remember things in short bites, let me give you kind of the Cliff Notes version first. 3 words: data, cloud, and engagement. Data, I think of it as the world's next natural resource. Cloud, simply put, any process or IT delivered as a service. And the word engagement, because I think it has forever changed how we engage but understand people at an individual level. So let me take each one, a couple comments about what I see clients looking for. Many of you serve clients. Many of you are clients we serve, which I appreciate. But what have we learned, what do they want, and what's going to happen? But let me first start with data, new natural resource. You know, there isn't a discussion, and every discussion I've had today, that isn't got data at the center of it, whether it's society, whether it's business, whether it's technology. And I am going to assert that we will look back on this time, 21st century, and we will look at data as a natural resource that powered the 21st century, just like if you think back in time, electricity was to the 18th, if you take back, or 19th, you take a look at hydrocarbons to the 20th, you will reflect back on data in that same way to the 21st century. And many people have had statistics. I tell you, there's one that always sticks out in my mind when it comes to data. Creation, 2.5 billion gigabytes per day, and 80% of all the world's data ever known to man has been created in the last 2 years. Now, every client I know believes strongly. You can see it in their actions. 3 out of 4 are piloting big data projects or have them in production. More interesting to me, 1 out of 3 are constantly looking at how do you monetize data to create a new business. 1 in 3 already. Which leads me to what I think is a phrase I will repeat. We look forward, and data will be the basis of competitive advantage for every company in every industry. Basis of competitive advantage to distinguish the winners and the losers. And this is why I can speak for my own company. In the last several years, we have invested over $24 billion in this area, 30 acquisitions, 30,000 engagements, and wrapped up last year with a big data analytics business of $16 billion. But what I think is more interest to you is, so what does determine the winners and losers, and what do they do? And so I want to share 2 things. And they're going to sound a little technology, but everybody can say, I'm a data business. All of us would say that. So what is it that's going to distinguish the future? 2 criteria. One is, and I say this to every CEO I visit, go push. How often are you using multiple types of information and pushing the edge on predictive analytics? Then you'll know whether you have a competitive advantage. Types are easy. You know, all the information you have in your company, rows and columns, structured, unstructured, everything, tweets, blogs, videos, pictures, you name it. But the big question is these kind of analytics. And what our research and all our work shows, best practices, and I'm going to share with you some pretty stunning results out of it. You'll do 3 things. At a base, you use analytics that describe a business. The next level is you predict. And the 3rd level is you are prescriptive. And I think one of my best analogies that make it simple is you think of a GPS. You get a map, point A to B. You see a route. That's a description. Okay, now I'm going to be predictive. You take this route, and it's going to be 20 minutes. Now I'm going to be prescriptive. While I drive, as you all know, we all have the ability now, the route changes dynamically, real time. That's prescriptive as I'm going. That's the world that you're going to apply to every part of your business, whether it's risk management, whether it's pricing, whether it's hiring, whether it's determination of skills. That's what will make a difference. And then the second, the guys that are really seeing a difference, they exploit the time value of data. That means battles won and lost in microseconds, right? And as I said, the results are striking. So take this away. Those 2 things, range of analytics, types, multiple sources of data, real-time use of it, those companies are 2.5 times more likely to offer new services, twice as likely to make their products smart, adding intelligence to them, and twice as likely to do things real time. So this is an underlying shift that is going to forever change the basis of competitive advantage for every company. Second shift, cloud. Now, everybody in here, how many of you are experts in cloud? Okay, I don't believe that answer, actually. I hope a lot more of you are, okay? Now, the point, Cloud, as I said, simple definition. Any IT process or business service offered as a service. Properly understood, properly done, this is going to be a game changer and a big deal. By 2016, a quarter of the apps in the world will be in the cloud. 80% of software developed right now is built for the cloud. But I want you to think about something, and what I share with every client, I think about it for my own business. What appears as a technology choice, it's not. You're making business model choices, and that's how to think about it. And this is where it becomes a competitive advantage. And I think clients will ask and answer 3 questions, which on the surface look like a technology choice. Underneath, it is absolutely a business model choice they're making. The first one sounds technology. They'll say, what kind of cloud architecture? The answer, you will end up building hybrid clouds. Now, why do I say that? Every company, on one hand, you're going to build your own. People talk about private clouds. Many of you participate in the build-out of those. They will also then go use public clouds. No problem. Everyone. We've got public clouds. Others have public clouds. You'll do it for speed, typically in what people call systems of engagement. But what's happening now is you will integrate those 2 worlds. You will see what happened in the 1990s happen again now as it did with the internet. Think about this. In the internet days, what did people do first? Put things up and they browsed. But then over time, serious transactions, and they connected to pricing, fulfillment, marketing, all that other information people already had to get more value out of it. And analysts say 50% of all companies will be hybrid in just 2017. So, point 1. Point 2, they'll ask the question, how do I manage data? And the answer is going to be, you will manage it as if it's on premise. Visibility, auditability, control, security are going to be the most important issues ever answered. Data management will be the most critical thing people decide with a cloud. And as many, we're sitting here in Europe, there are 100 countries that have data protection. Whether or not you agree is a different story, but 100 countries with data protection laws, that'll have an influence. Cost to move data, security for data. This is why some of you saw we invested another $1.2 billion in January to take 25 cloud data centers to 40 around the world. And then the third thing people will say is, can I use this to reinvent and drive innovation? I assert, cloud, absolutely. In fact, it will not only do that, many of you will participate in the build-out of something called an API economy. Everything exposed as a service. Anything you offer today, you're going to expose it in pieces as a service that can be pulled together, not programmed, scripted together. And this is why you see 75% of companies already either planning or using some form of software as a service, but it's going to move forward from there. This is why we ourselves invested $7 billion in cloud so far to remake enterprise IT for the era of cloud. And last year, a business over $4 billion already. Now, I said there's a third shift. So keep in mind, data, cloud. The third one is that word engagement. And when I think of engagement, those of you in a mobile conference, near and dear to your heart, changing how an individual is understood. But I'd ask you to think about a new culture that's emerging that is not defined by age. It is people empowered by knowledge, enriched by a network, and they expect value in return for the information that you give them. I find it very interesting. 50% of all purchases, they're influenced by digital research. More interesting, in just the last year, the number of people willing to give up their GPS location where they're at has doubled in just 1 year. So what I see the enterprise focused on is 3 things. One is speed. I mean, any of you that ever contact via social networking, contact a company, you expect a response, survey says, in 5 minutes, if not immediately. Personalization, next thing. 80% will trade personal information if you give them something of value in return. That's something I hope, and David and I hope we talk more about it, it's security and trust. They are focused on it. $1 trillion of online retail, additional online retail, hangs in the balance based on this point if people can become comfortable with how companies control their personal information. And this is why another area, so many of you, but we are focused on social mobile, underpinned by security. And at enterprise level, this is going to, and I'm going to come back and talk about this. So, 3 big trends: data, cloud, engagement. Now, if you pull them together, I said it's disruptive. Now, take a mobile lens on it, and let me wrap up by talking about when you take mobile and put it this way, I'm going to be bold to say, I think 3, call them implications, conclusions, predictions, whatever you'd like about the mobile world from an enterprise point of view. First one, mobile will hang in the balance of being secure. Or, say differently, mobile will be about secure transactions. Security will be a gating factor there. And when I use the word transaction, I think about a healthcare transaction, a purchase transaction, a supply chain transaction. I think of human to machine to machine, all different combinations that are out there. And those things will all integrate with data and systems across the world, and hence they'll have to be enterprise class. And everybody you interface with in a mobile-first world, as you guys well know, their expectations change. And in fact, mobile is an extension of a person. In fact, I'd use the word people curate their life that way. It means you and I have quite a responsibility. Trusted, available, secure. I was thinking of this before I came out. I was reviewing some work we just did for the Ministry of Rail in China in redoing their mobile systems for ticketing. And you know we just finished Chinese New Year. It is the largest human migration that happens in a short period of time, 200 million people moving about, 10 million a day, secure, very sophisticated transactions done. That's because it's an extension of life. That's what happens. Second thing I would tell you about mobile cloud together, they will redefine software development as we know it. Redefine software development as we know it. You hear the mantra, cloud first, mobile first. It's certainly the mantra in all my development divisions. Cloud extends an enterprise, it integrates, it's part of, but this is going to be more than just mobile apps. I think many of you would agree with me, the world is becoming software defined. So, I invite you. We made a big announcement, but this is an open announcement. There will be more of this. We made a big announcement on Monday, and it is to take all the developers of the world, and there are 18 million developers in the world, IT developers, 18 million to the world of cloud and mobile. An open platform as a service that gives them the services to connect the world of mobile into all the existing data and applications that are already out there. That is, to me, going to be a future, is going to completely reshape, as I said, these composable services, and everyone will participate in this, not just one type of application developer. And then I want to mention my third sort of prediction here. I also think mobile, for all of us that run companies, it'll put a premium on the word culture and on the word analytics. Well, why do I say that? Many of you come from a world of DevOps, right? So you build things, test them, they're in production, round and round, real-time, iterative, back and forth. That style is going to move into how we run our companies. When people engage you mobile first, they expect you, actually, any part of your company, sales, product development, HR, rapid response. And that means the front office of everybody's company, at a minimum, starts to change. And I like to use this analogy, sort of like you have an X-ray on your company, it becomes pretty obvious what you can and can't do. Everybody sees through it. And it's authentic. You have to be authentic to what you are. That's culture. That's culture. And the other thing it says it puts a premium on is analytics again. So I'm going to beat that drum. It is the only way that you will meet expectations. If you run a company, it is the only way, whether it's next best action, a consumer or a power grid, or personalization, you will only be able to do it with analytics. So now, pull all that together. Like I said, mobile will be all about secure transactions. Mobile will redefine software development. And in fact, it'll put a premium on culture and analytics. And I think you have a profoundly different world that David and I are going to talk about. And I'm going to end by having a little bit of fun here. I would like to make an offer to you, even personally to you. And in the world of mobile, as I said, this is an ecosystem conference. There is wonderful opportunity. Mobile is no doubt a catalyst, but there will also be challenges. And just that big data is a challenge in itself. The 2.5 billion gigabytes a day is a challenge. You can't program enough to make sense of all that data all the time, real time, every day. So you're going to have a new era of computing come out. You've heard some of us, and so allow me a little bit of a commercial on this, talk about this. The third era cognitive. Cognitive meaning first era of computing were machines that counted things. Second, programmed. Everything I've seen at this conference is programmed. Third era are things that learn. You teach and they learn. You teach and they learn. You engage completely different. It's collaborative with these systems. And 2 years ago, we announced one of the first was Jeopardy. It was Jeopardy. It was Watson that played on Jeopardy, if any of you saw it. Watson played the game Americans, many others broadcast around the world. It's a game show. And Watson went ahead and beat some of the world champions in this game. Well, since then, what we have been doing, and I'm going to show you a little bit of a clip, and I'm going to get to what I'd like to have some fun with. Since that time, Watson's been in training for medicine, financial services, retail, and travel. And when I say in training, it has been absorbing all the known knowledge to mankind in these areas, does work in natural language, thinks that way, trained by specialists in medicine, clinical case studies. And rather than sort of describe this, I think it's something you're better to see. So I'm going to show you just a 2-minute clip on this, and then let me come back with what I'd like to offer you.
From the T.J. Watson Research Center, this is Jeopardy!
And welcome everyone to a very special Jeopardy event. This is Watson.
An IBM computer system able to rapidly understand and analyze natural language, Watson.
Here we go. This person is appointed by a testator to carry out the directions and requests in his will. Watson.
What is executor?
Right. She died in the church and was buried along with her name. Nobody came. Watson.
What is Eleanor Rigby?
Yes. Here is the final Jeopardy category. We're looking for Bram Stoker. Who is Bram Stoker?
In 2011, the world was introduced to a new era of computing. Since winning on Jeopardy, Watson has turned his attention to bigger challenges. How big? How about healthcare, where Watson is truly a game changer? At New York's Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, doctors are training Watson to help provide individualized treatment options for certain cancer patients. Here's how. A doctor begins by pulling up a patient's medical history. To start making decisions, the doctor needs medical information relevant to the patient's condition. So Watson consults journals, guidelines, clinical trials, millions of documents, fast. Based on what Watson knows about the patient, it suggests further tests to help make more confident recommendations. The doctor notices Watson is identifying 2 specific tests and wonders why. Watson shows him. When the patient's test results come back, Watson has more data to work with. So the doctor asks Watson,
"What's a revised course of action for this patient?"
Watson recalibrates and comes up with options for an individualized treatment plan in just seconds. Watson doesn't make doctors' decisions, but gives them options to consider based on millions of pieces of evidence. One of the doctors training Watson is Dr. Mark Chris.
The amazing thing about Watson, though it's a machine, it truly is personalizing the care of that patient in a way never before possible. Our results of treatment and experience of the individual patients is fed into Watson, and Watson learns from those cases. Everybody's going to be a winner here.
Oncology isn't the only field Watson is reinventing. Accessible through the cloud and on mobile devices, Watson is at the heart of a growing ecosystem of entrepreneurs using data to transform every industry, like retail, finance, research, education, travel. Watson is changing the way we live, the way we work, the way we think. And the most exciting part? This is just the beginning. Now for the real question. What will you do with Watson?
So, what will you do? What we'd like to do, first let me tell you what I've done with it since then. In fact, just the beginning of January, we launched a whole division in IBM on Watson and its commercialization. We progressed quite a long way. Another $1 billion into it, a couple thousand more people. So we are moving ahead aggressively. But this is a new era, and we elected to take a different route with this. So everyone else has a number of their devices and all their different approaches as we walk through the hallway here. This is a service, but we're opening it up to an ecosystem. And so an ecosystem of content providers, software developers, clients, you name it, to build businesses on top of Watson. So we're going to take it one step further as part of our participation here and offer the Watson Mobile Developer Challenge. So over the next 3 months, and you can do it at watson.com, log on. We're going to pick 3 winning teams. We will do the seed funding for their businesses. Watson, they get access to all of Watson's expertise. Also the use of IBM Interactive. It is the #1 rated interactive design studio in the world. And then we will help commercialize, help go to market for these companies. So we hope this is it. You're going to build many businesses off of this. So I'd like to have some fun, have you challenge the world on the art of what is possible. So with that, let me thank you. And David and I are going to have a great conversation. Let me bring him back out here. David. Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Ginni.
We'll have some fun with that.
Please sit down over there. Yeah, so the idea with this challenge is that Watson can be the back end of revolutionary mobile apps, right?
Yep.
What kind of thing do you think might be possible with that sort of architecture?
You know, we first, when we just unveiled this idea of an ecosystem, we've already got thousands of applicants now already, but we're going to do a special one here on the mobile developer side. So carve out input of 3 all the way through the life cycle. They cover reinventing travel, concierge services, health and well-being, wonderful applications I have already seen prototype for retail. So when you go online to buy something, would you rather not, in fact, North Face was doing some great work on this, prototyping, to take live, where you just interact with natural language and say, I have a vacation plan to Patagonia in January. Tell me what I need to bring. And obviously, Watson's going back through. He's got to know where Patagonia is, what's the weather, what's it doing, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought one of the best illustrations, I then saw what happened. It came up with all these certain backpacks, et cetera, what you might need. And one of them has ABS on it. And I said, what is ABS? So I'd used a conventional search tool to do what is ABS. And I got back 750 million entries on anti-lock braking systems. Well, that is not what this is, okay? If you're going into Patagonia, this is about an avalanche system. And it knew the difference. I mean, it came up with the definition of these avalanche sort of, I can't remember the whole thing, what it did for avalanche. So I expect retail, reinvention of travel. We have seen so many different ideas, and that's the purpose. We want the world to run. Education, reinventing education. We're doing work, actually we've got a group started in Africa on this, on making the connections on why children don't learn, very obscure reasons. There's a well that's poisoned in a certain area that's impacting the kids that are drinking it, and they've got some attention deficit syndromes going into school. People are going to come with all different ways.
So these apps could be for-profit, non-profit.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to us.
And the idea is that Watson is effectively becoming a platform for more and more outside parties to basically take advantage of as part of their own application architecture.
That's right. And
so have a cognitive back end.
Think of it as a corpus of information that it's learned from in a subject matter area. And we've got clients now, banks as an example, completely looking to reinvent their front end. An insurance company completely looking at how to use this to help their advocates in their call centers pick out telcos. What is the right plan for someone to be on? What is their right data plan?
Well, all of the things you're mentioning now are great examples of the kind of radical reinvention of most businesses that you were effectively implying up there when you're saying it really is about your business model. I think that's an excellent way to talk about the cloud, mobile, social, big data, analytics, all that stuff that is the core of the massive simultaneous transformations the industry is going through. I mean, this is a big part of what we at Techonomy talk about too. I mean, where do you see the best successes? What industries get that the best? And what industries do you think get it the least?
I think, and this is, you and I David and I were talking about this before, this idea that these 3 shifts, they're not 3 isolated shifts. And this is what makes this a really unique point in time. Data, cloud, engagement, they're all at once. And, because any one of them would be very interesting for this industry. That's right. For our industry, but then the impact is on every industry. And you use the word business model, which I always use, because a disruption to a business model is one of the most significant competitive advantages or disadvantages,
right.
Depending which side of the fence you're on with that. And so my view is it is full game for any industry. You certainly see, particularly because I think the area about data and analytics is such a fundamental platform in all cases. You see some of the most aggressive is in this industry here. You see it with the carriers or telco or wire communications provider, whichever way you would like to look at it. You see it with banking. I mean, how many clients I now see starting to put in place even chief data officers reporting to the CEO. These are not technical positions, right? So I see it in financial services. I see it in telco. But honestly, I do see it across the board. And this thing about monetizing your information, don't think of that as just taking personal information and trying to find a way to sell it. It is about trying to go into new businesses because of it. And that is a very different
But do you
thing.
worry that most business leaders still don't get the scope of the changes and the pace that they're transforming everything? It often occurs to me that an awful lot of companies are not getting with the program and risking cannibalization by startups that are popping up all over the place that are just smarter.
Yeah, I think that point of speed is a real point. That it is absolutely, if you try to compare today to the past, today is moving at the speed of change is much faster. And so you should not be sort of dissuaded by that, meaning, and that is all the more reason to push forward with these things and think of them as, and that's why every conversation I have, I do a big dinner table with a number of CEOs, and it is on this point and about how to use this as competitive differentiation for all their businesses and at the speed at which and what to practically do about it. Because you run a business today and you reinvent it for the future at the same time in many cases.
So it means, I guess you're talking to CEOs are getting it more than they used to.
Without a doubt.
You're not selling to the CIO, and in some cases where you would have talked to the tech people, you've got to talk to the business leaders in a company. That's a given, I assume.
Probably everybody in this audience, I can see lots of folks, we would all experience the same thing. This brings technology to the forefront of every industry, every profession.
Yeah.
Every profession. So I think there are different, David and I were briefly talking about education. It makes me think of this. One of the most important things for any country, any company, it's going to be the type of education needed for the future. This stream about thinking about a culture of data analytics, this is not just for mathematicians and it's not just for operation engineers. It is going to be a thread through every profession, every degree you get, and you're going to hire that way, right? Today, many companies say, well, I hired 100 data scientists or something. This has got to be systemic in what your skills are. We've probably got 1,000 universities on a program around data and analytics that is broad, not just for my days. As you were so nice to point out how many years ago that was, David, about my...
I'm older than you are, so I can get away with it.
We got that going for us, so that makes us two the oldest people here. But this whole point, it was about you've got to have that as a silver thread through everything that you do. And you can't count on just hiring engineers.
Well, it's almost like you're trying to make IBM a role model because you are making big changes in the company. You have sold a number of major businesses. I think just here at Mobile World Congress, you announced acquiring of Cloudant.
Yes, we did.
You recently bought another big cloud service company. You said in your talk you're going to have a total of 40 data centers around the world, which is really a huge number. You've announced $1 billion investment here in the Blue Mix platform as a service business. So you're making very rapid changes in your own business. Do you think
they're illustrative of the speed required?
Right, and do you think of IBM a little bit as having to show its customers just how much you have to remake? You are one of the biggest companies in the world, but maybe it's not a choice. It isn't a choice. That's the interpretation I would have to take away from you. But in effect, you are showing what other customers need to do, right?
Yeah, I would. This to me, and I know many people in this audience obviously work for a company that maybe had a history of some period of time, maybe not just born yesterday. And as I say, any company has to go through transitions. We're 102 years old, right? So what we started out doing, time clocks, meat slicers, cheese slicers, is not what we do today. And you go through these transitions. I say, to be any age, of course you go through transitions and move to these new areas. And I think that applies to everybody that is out there.
And you mentioned the mobile industry. Do you think the mobile industry really is changing as quickly as it could be changing in the face of all these threats and these transformations? I mean, the WhatsApp acquisition of Facebook just brings to the fore how, a so-called over-the-top thing has come along. It's worth a huge amount of money. theoretically, that could have been developed by a carrier,
Yeah, sure.
but it wasn't because they had that SMS revenue they didn't want to give up. People are going to have to be, as I use the word, unsentimental more than they have. I mean, how do you feel really concretely about how the mobile industry has been doing?
I think there are lots of great examples of people who moved very fast and changed. This industry's been this is not a new thing for this industry. There has been a lot of change in this industry and related industries for quite a period of time, actually. I mean, you can look at a short snapshot, but this whole industry, and I actually think a better way to think of it is an ecosystem, because there are so many, it's evidenced by how many people are from different parts of that ecosystem that are at this conference. It has been under change a long time. I think it is moving along very fast, but I also think there is also a bit of there will be many benefits some of the current people have as they put new models in combined with old models. I mean, so you're going to see a lot of this creativity and innovation come as those worlds integrate as well.
You mentioned security, more than mentioned it. You emphasized how central it is to all this, and I think no one could disagree with that. But again, looking at the pace of change and looking at the extraordinary security challenges that so many businesses are facing today, do you worry that security technology and security capabilities are not moving as quickly as mobile and these other trends are advancing?
Yeah, I think the analogy I think about for security that I think is helpful, there are two approaches you can take, and you'll use both actually. But one approach is you think about, you put an alarm on your house, and when the alarm goes off, you go tend to whatever, somebody broke in, they did something, you go do something about it. The other way to look at it is think of the human body, and all of us have germs inside of the human body. And what do you have? You have antibodies that go after them, and then when they become resistant, other ones form. I believe that at the end of the day, because of the rapid pace you just talked about on security, the answer to security is going to be analytics, period. You will have to be constantly doing some form of analytics and assume there are bad things in all different places, that you will find them and find them early, and that will be all those kinds of analytics, looking at data, looking at abnormalities, and as I call it, looking for footprints in the sand long before anything happens.
And those analytics themselves will be cloud services, I presume.
They will absolutely be cloud services.
Which you will operate among others?
We and others will operate. We just had an announcement actually yesterday here, I think, as part of this with one of our big partners that we work with. Ourselves and AT&T made an announcement to take in a cloud all of the network analytics they have, all of what we have. We look at 20 billion security incidents a day, put it together, and do a lot of analytics around it for clients. And so I think this is really, it's both an opportunity for everyone, and it's an approach that will be taken to not just this, but it would be risk in lots of areas that you'll take this approach.
You mentioned China in your talk, and how do you spent a lot of time there, I know. IBM is truly global, has huge operations in China. How would you characterize the rate at which business in China understands the kinds of changes you're talking about compared to the rest of the world, Europe and the United States in particular?
Well, I think this is an interesting opportunity for a lot of countries around the world that don't have the same infrastructure that have been built in both, whether it's the U.S. or Europe at different points in time. And I think they've got an opportunity, it's maybe a bit of a paraphrase word, but to leapfrog in some ways. And you see a great rapid pace of change in China between social and mobile computing. And even just in the last 6 months, a great rapid pace with cloud, mobile, social.
You think a more rapid pace than, say, in the United States?
Than in its previous. And then in its previous. So rapid pace of change, but it is a chance, as I just said, this is about business models, to do new things. This is why I think in Africa as well, and not just because Africa had a mobile infrastructure to begin, it will be, there's that saying, necessity is the motherhood of invention, right? And that is going to be true. It led us to, we put the 12th IBM Research Lab. This is true research. And so there are 11. One continent didn't have it. It was Africa. Last year we opened up Nairobi. There's a reason we put the lab in Nairobi. The problems that we are all working on in the world, they are getting too big. You cannot bring the problem to research. You have to bring research to the problem. And as a result of it, you are going to leapfrog and come up with good enough solutions in all of these countries that don't have previous infrastructure like that. So I think you're going to get great innovation, particularly in areas like healthcare and other coming out of these.
It's interesting, when Zuckerberg was sitting in that same chair the other day, he was talking about one of the things they do with new employees at Facebook is sending them to the developing world to experience what Facebook use is like in those places, because you can't really describe it. You can't understand it if you don't go there. Yeah, you've been to Africa 4 times since becoming CEO.
4 times this year.
4 times this year?
Last 12 months.
In the last 12 months.
Last 12 months.
So even,
not this year.
No, you
When
just
are we
were
in
there because I
February?
know
I was just there. Yes,
you
I
were
was just there a few
there.
weeks ago.
And
Yeah.
so just talk a little bit more about Africa as a opportunity. You see it as one of the great opportunities.
Look, I think it's one of these lessons. Always, I was always taught steward for the long run. So I believe this next decade is going to be the decade that you see many different countries in Africa progress as opportunity for many of us. Many of you are there in different pieces. Mobile certainly is. But the mistake people make, Africa is not one thing, obviously. It is 54 countries with very different political regimes in place, different positions of maturity and the like. But particularly Central Sub-Saharan Africa, this will be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it is still advancing forward. And there is enough stability in different places that this will proceed over this next decade. This will be.
You were recently in Nigeria and Morocco.
I was in both, this time Nigeria and Morocco, but whether it's been Kenya or Ghana or all the different, Egypt, wherever we've been, we have a big business there already. But I believe we're now in 24 countries across Africa of the 54. And 24, this next decade, I would urge people, this is the decade that this is going to begin to take it forward. And it'll be because of course, the demographics that are available. It'll be, of course, the infrastructure that's there. It will be stability that begins to form in many different places through political change that is there. And you are going to get the chance to reinvent businesses. So I am quite excited about the kinds of different projects and what we're working on there, and going to stay with it. And it's why we brought Watson to Africa as well. And in this case, it's going to work on cervical cancer to start in education, as I mentioned. But we made a couple other announcements. We put up innovation centers, and then as well, we offered all of our software as a service free to all universities. They can grow the next generation workforce.
So some of these really state-of-the-art Watson apps using cognitive computing, the machine-to-machine stuff.
I'd love one of the winners to be doing something there.
Come out of those places as much as anywhere. So it's not just that they're going to start growing their economy. They're actually going to come in at the state-of-the-art in many instances. And you're giving the universities special capabilities. So you would expect a lot of this cutting-edge suite of transformative tools to be applied right off the bat in economies like Nigeria and Morocco.
I saw a great thing that the team worked on out of Kenya, which if any of you have ever worked on, and many of you have, traffic mobilization, traffic management, traffic congestion sort of projects, and in many, if it was London, if it was Brisbane, if it was Sao Paulo, these are big infrastructure projects. There they had 9 cameras, 9 low-grade cable CCTV kind of cameras out in Kenya, in Nairobi. And the team said, you know what, we're not going to put a whole infrastructure in here, but I bet we can predict where these cars are going to go just with that data, just with what we have. That's it. And between what they know from cell phones is obviously positioning, and it's a great example of what the art of the possible is.
What do you think in all this IBM can most uniquely do that nobody else can do?
I would position and underscore this point of remaking enterprise IT for this era. So our understanding of data, analytics, if you go back in our history, just about every major invention, I'm both humble and proud to say, came out of IBM Labs when it comes to data and analytics. And so these big three bets, we've placed 3 big bets around the world of data and analytics, around the world of cloud. And when I say engagement, it is enterprise social mobile underscored by security. And it's understanding it from the enterprise perspective and how to do those things. I think that's what we uniquely bring.
And in the course of doing that, you're going to be much more of a software and services company and much less of a hardware company. You're already not nearly as much of a hardware company as people think, right?
Right.
What is it? What's the percentage hardware revenues?
Our hardware revenues are, 10 to 15% of the company.
Yeah.
And so already our services and software business, right? The software business is one of the largest in the world, as well as our services business. But but hardware will still play an important part. And this will be an incredibly important part of our portfolio, our mainframe, our Power Series. They are built for data in the cloud and data analytics. Because again, I'm back to this huge amounts and what you're going to have to do and the security aspects. Those are things that are built for that world. So, because stuff still has to run on something somewhere.
Right.
Right?
But again, look just quickly on Watson. I mean, when I think of Watson, because especially in the days even of the Jeopardy thing, it was sort of a box, right? It took a whole room full of air-conditioned.
Yeah, not anymore.
But really, it's a set of software services,
it's a
right?
cloud
and
offering.
it will exist in all those 40 data centers. Essentially, you can make it available anywhere.
Yes.
It's just a cloud offering. It's not a computer.
Right.
Right.
It is a
it's
service
a set
offering.
of cognitive capabilities. And the
You
other
can
thing
build cogs with it.
Yeah,
That's
no,
right.
I wanted you to talk about that. I love that word because I hadn't heard it until you used it. What is a cog?
Well, you think about composable services, right? So you ask Watson to calculate something. It's a cog. It brings back an answer, right? So you call different parts of it, and you get and create an application out of it. That's what people are going to end up doing, right? So you are going to use it to do a cog. You can have all these little, you can think of them as apps, but they'll be cognitive, right?
So instead of apps, we'll have cogs.
We'll have cogs. We're at just the beginning. Eras
cogs
will play out over
system?
the years. They will play out over the years. And like I said, I've seen a couple thousand of these applicants of what their ideas are.
Well, I think this idea of machines that learn is extremely exciting. I think
this has been in the works for decades. This isn't as if it was many of you would say understand artificial intelligence as an example, one thing. So even Watson, it's the combination of so many disciplines and sciences between natural programming language or natural processing language and understanding it, parallel algorithms, the amount of ability to do this in a cost-effective way, because it is not a search engine and it's not a lookup. It's not a table lookup. It actually makes conclusions, draws confidence, has evidence.
And the longer it exists, the better it's going to be. So in 10 years,
and research
it's
is
gonna be
working
smarter.
on giving it sight so that
Meanwhile,
it reads.
Google is trying something similar. Even Apple with Siri has a very simple version of a cognitive device. So you've got a kind
Very
of battle
different.
going with Google there, but it's a very healthy battle for the world.
Very different.
We got to wrap, but thanks so much for being here and to talk about it and to make
You're
a
great.
great presentation.
And thank you to the audience, and for all of you that are our clients, just one more time, thank you for the business
First
you do
time
with
any
IBM.
IBM CEO's ever been at Mobile World Congress.
And I've enjoyed it. Yes. Thank you. Hey, David, you did a great job. Thanks, my friend.